I identify very much with this panel of old man Tony Stark, who looks like Stanley a little bit, falling out of his hot rod, his gutted hot rod, and Ben trying to call his attention to Peter. Because this comic has taken a really weird turn where all of a sudden it went from Benny Parker struggling with his legacy of being, Spider-Man's son and having the Spider-Man powers to Peter trying to stop him from being Spider-Man and the narrative ripping ripping his Spider-Man-ness away from him. And it seems pretty strange to me. This is Spider-Man Bloodline Part 3, written by J.J. and Henry Abrams. The art is by Sarah Pichelli, with help from Elisabetta De Mazzio, and then the colors was Dave Stewart. Joe Caramagna did the lettering. And what else is this? Oh, the cover artists, Oliver Coppel and Dave Stewart. Okay, that's why I recognize part of it, I guess. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and talk about the cover next, and then I will get into some more of my issues, although I do have some highlights. But overall, I would rate this like a 3 out of 5, maybe like a 2.5, I don't know. So my biggest problem with these covers is that the main covers are all basically telling a story of the past. They have a theme where they're showing Spider-Man, and I'm pretty sure it's Peter Parker Spider-Man, not Benny, in conflict with Cadaverous, or I guess the Cadaverous minions. And the first one showed him fighting Cadaverous himself, and who knows how long that battle went on for, and were these guys rampaging for a couple weeks, a month, a day, I don't know, but it seemed to be a big protracted fight that Peter had with them, and it keeps showing glimpses of that. And I get that the story is steeped in the past, but I don't like how the covers have almost nothing to do with the current day story, although if they did a cover based on what happened here, it may not be too exciting. One of the aspects of this story that feels funny to me is that, it's a father and son writing it, and the issues are very much father and son related, and sort of about family and belonging, and how, not how one deals with nepotism, but how one deals with taking on the legacy of their father. And like I've complained about before, it all feels a little metatextual, and that's a little frustrating because I feel like The Force Awakens felt very metatextual, and this feels like The Force Awakens, which isn't one of my favorite Star Wars movies. But anyway, there are some interesting things that feel pretty unique for this comic, and one of them happens in this conversation that Benny and Peter are having in the very beginning, which is that throughout the run of the comic so far, word bubbles have been overlapping with each other, and one person's words are cutting off the other person's words. And at first I didn't really like it, I didn't really get it, but it has a great sense of urgency, and it feels realistic because you can decipher what's under there, but it kind of mimics how you would hear it garbled if you were listening to the conversation or hearing dialogue in a show. Of course, the art is really good. I especially want to compliment when there's the big explosion in the Parker house. The coloring is really great. Everything kind of takes on a single color tone. I'm not very good when it comes to describing the technical art aspects of color design or whatever, but like everything's in like the same tone, as if if you had like a sepia filter or like a orange colored filter or whatever, everything takes on an orange tone from the explosion, like the flames, and it's nice because it adds a nice unity to it. And then Pichelli, of course, her lines on Benny and Peter being blasted away look really great, and there's books flying in the air. You get a really good sense of motion, like you're witnessing this moment of the explosion and just feeling the force that they're feeling as they're blown back by it, which is pretty great. And the art has never been a problem in this comic so far. Speaking of the art being pretty great, Pichelli does this really cool perspective of Benny like on his hands and knees looking up, dazed after the explosion, after Peter's been stabbed by Cadaverous and is being taken away. And it's just a really great shot. I don't know what more to say about it. The framing of the the wall and roof being torn away and Cadaverous filling most of it, and then you have in midground his minions, and then the the hands and forearms of Benny framing the rest of the shot. It's really great. That's all I can say. More good stuff to say about the art. When Cadaverous has captured Peter, he's put him in one of these pods, and I don't know what's happening to Peter. I mean, I guess it's this process of, he claims it's healing at some point in the narrative, and then we hear later from Stark that there are these people who are focused on a medical breakthrough for healing people, and it must be related to that, to those people specifically. I wonder if it's the guy trying to revive his wife, or the lady scientist who was working with the stuff on him. That makes the most sense. But also, the text supposed to be 100. I don't know. The timeline doesn't seem to work very well for me, but I don't know when this is supposed to take place in the future. Mary Jane and Peter could have had Benny when they were, in their late 30s or something. That's a little unclear. Anyway, there's just a really great mood in here. Peter's hooked up to one of these pods, or he's inside of it, and he has all these wires connected to him, and the wires are spilling out from the room, and they're this stark red against the gray and muted colors in the rest of the room, and the nice dark shadows. And then there's one of the cadaverous creatures, bots, drones, whatever, crouching, and it ends up getting up and going over to his tank and like tapping it, and it just has a really creepy feel. And there's a little bit of a sense of like, you can feel maybe the creature like pondering or wondering about Peter, and it's just kind of an interesting spin on it. Now, this isn't showing up too great in the video editor that I'm using right now while I'm recording, but Pacelli does this thing. I think she's done it in the other issues, or maybe it's the colorist instead, Stewart, where there will be somebody in shadow, and in this case it's Stark in silhouette, and you're seeing him from the back. He's engaging in dialogue, but there's like a dirtiness on the shadow, like there's dust collected on there, or like a smear, or I don't know. It's just an interesting technique, and I really like it. It makes I don't know, it just kind of makes everything pop a little bit more, and my eye's really drawn to Stark. He has a lot of dialogue in here too, and I don't know, it's very effective, even if I don't like what they did with the mirror. And the thing is, I don't really care what happens to Tony Stark. I'm not that attached to his character at this point in my life. What my concern really is that this is a Spider-Man comic book, and Stark's being introduced. You also have Riri Williams, which is kind of a nice touch, just because it's, this story is carrying on as if the current Marvel continuity were to continue, which I like, and it's something that was also done, or I felt like was done in Spider-Man Life Story. Anyway. The issue here is that the story is being very much ripped away from Benny as Spider-Man, at least in this middle chapter, and there's only 2 more issues after this, with these resurrected Avengers coming along, and I'm a little confused as to where this is coming from. I'm sure we're going to get some expository dialogue, or maybe it'll just be a story that'll be better to hear more about at another time. I don't know, but it's frustrating. Again, I'll reiterate. Peter's telling him not to be Spider-Man after Faye was encouraging him to be Spider-Man and to embrace it, and he goes and saves that Greg Grunberg guy, and in the last issue, and then it's being taken away from him by Peter, and then the narrative, and then when they get to dealing with Tony, like there's this one mythos of pain where Stark is upset because apparently he and Peter were friends in this version of things, and Ben's like desperate for him to help, and he's trying to, and I guess before he it's frustrating me that he's got to go to Stark for help, and that these zombie Avengers are coming back or whatever, and they're gonna kind of maybe derail things a little bit, or that's what it feels like to me. That's my concern. But it takes so long for Stark to straighten up, and I know he's supposed to be a drunk and a loser at this point and whatever, but it's just really frustrating that it takes so long to get in gear. It almost feels like they're just padding time out so that they could have this big reveal of the Cadaverous Avengers getting involved in the story, and then it's a setup, I guess, for Peter to, or for Benny to step up and act I mean, he's got the spider suit in his backpack, so what's going to happen in the beginning of next episode or next issue? I mean, I guess he's going to throw the suit on real quick and start fighting them because, Thor just, nuked their car with a bolt lightning, and, there's no way for them to escape, and he's going to have to, slow them down or stop them in order to get out of there. We see at the Stark building that there are these Iron Man security guard guys, which is a gag because they're in they're like bouncers in sport coats or whatever, but they also look like the War Machine armor, which is kind of silly. I didn't really appreciate that joke, but are those guys going to come out and help? And if those are drones or whatever, why are they wearing clothes? Anyway, they might help them escape the Avengers, but then it's other people will be doing the action, doing the saving, doing the heroism for Benny, and he won't get to shine on its own. And I mean, I thought this story would be about him coming into that. This issue has been a real negative turning point for me, and I gotta say, by this point, issue 3 of really issue 1 of the M2 Spider-Girl from 99, 98 that DeFalco and company worked on is way better than this was, as far as a story of a spider kid carrying on in Peter's place, or with Peter around, and that's just it's too bad. I would think with the powerhouse team of Abrams and Abrams working on this, it'd be better. I mean, it isn't. The art is a little bit better, though. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me. Check out mjmunoz.com for more of my work. I'm an aspiring author who will gladly accept your financial support through coffee, or you can buy merch from my Redbubble store. Swinging Through Comics can be found on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and mjmunoz.com/STC. Relevant links are in the show notes. If you had a good time, like and share this. Subscribe and ring that bell to catch me next time I'm Swinging Through Comics.